welcome to another DorkLair action figure review. Today I'm taking a look at the Figura Obscura Father Christmas green retailer exclusive. This figure was part of a wave that actually ended up being split. It was the retailer exclusive wave that included the Headless Horseman. Both Father Christmas and the Headless Horseman did ship, but then there's a couple figures that got delayed. Sir Lee of the Elven Guard and the remake Blue Glow Hagnon figures. Those two are going to be coming out early next year. So that wave got split up a little bit, and that's why if you ordered that whole wave and you're only getting half of it, that's why those other two figures were delayed. But we do have this awesome Father Christmas in hand. This more Father Christmassy Father Christmas, less Santa Claus-esque Father Christmas. This one has a little more green kind of nature look to it. Some of the, classic artwork will have him in this kind of green outfit. So definitely a different look than the original one, but it's just the colorway that's different. All the colors are all different. Other than that, it's pretty much the same release, except for one little piece that we will get to in a minute. Zooming in for a close-up of Father Christmas, here's a look at the figure with the hood on still, so that we can get a look at these cloth goods designed by C. Jessam that the factory did a really good job of executing, and they look great. They have that floral ornate piece that kind of comes around here. They've got the really soft, it's so soft, this fabric here. It's like a velvety kind of soft fabric, and this kind of has a little fur feel to it. Yeah, it's got wires throughout. There's a wire all along this hood, giving it that kind of nice shape right there. There's a wire on the sort of like cape part that goes around the sort of collar piece here. There's wires even on the cuffs at the lower end of the sleeves. And then, of course, a wire all the way down and around the edge of that robe there. So really nice robe. The pockets function. You can stick things in there like the little toys that he comes with, or the trumpet or whatever. And then we have this undercoat, and I'll later on remove everything so you can get a good look at that. That does have a Velcro piece on the back for easy removal. So really nice looking cloth goods on this figure. And then a look at the head sculpt. So this was the secondary head on the original release. Now the original release had two heads that were both Whitebeard heads. This one has a Whitebeard head, basically the same head as the original release, the main head. And then the alternate head here that the original release had is painted in a brown color, giving him a little more vitality and youthfulness here. And I think this works well when you think about Jacob Marley just coming out and having this figure here. It almost feels like this could be a Ghost of Christmas Present. Here's a close-up of the face. And I do think the eyes and the face and everything is painted really well. You've got a little bit of rosiness in the cheeks. I love the sculpture of this long beard. This guy can totally double as a wizard. And then the one other detail that we can still sort of see right now without taking all the stuff off is the belt. So this does come with two belts, unlike the original Father Christmas. This is the alternate belt that was sort of in the back of the box that, as I was opening it, sort of fell out in its own separate baggie. But this belt here is a fabric piece rather than a sculpted plastic piece. This is that kind of fake leather vinyl type of stuff. I did have to poke another hole in the belt because I didn't want it as cinched as it originally was. Like you can see this hole here. So I took a fork and a knife basically, and I jimmy rigged a hole there. I poked the hole with the tip of the knife, and then I made it bigger with the fork tine. But yeah, so then I have that tucked around, and I like the way it kind of gives them a little more wide-waisted look here with that. But you could go with the thinner look and have it completely cinched in if you want with that original hole. So yeah, a nice little addition there. And the problem with the original belt was that it was so tight, not too tight, but it was so perfectly fitting that it was tricky to like peg it in and get it to stay in. It would often pop off as you're like posing the figure around. Personally, I will be displaying it with the original belt. It just has a lot more detail. But that'll be once I get it all posed up, and it'll be in the pose that it's going to just stay in. So, both belts have their pros and their cons. And here he is all zoomed out. Father Christmas stands just under 6.5 inches tall. For comparisons, here we have the other Figura Obscura releases. On the left is the original Father Christmas. On the right is the original Krampus. Next up, a couple standard Mythic Legions figures. On the left is a standard 1.0 figure Scapular the Crypt Breaker. The 1.0 figures are the sort of original mold, the original kind of like larger body figures in the 6-inch scale. And then on the right is the slimmer 2.0 figure. That's the elf builder from the Tactics wave. And that is the slimmer body. The elves and goblins and things are on that smaller body. Father Christmas is in fact on that same slimmer body, but it has a 1.0 head. So you have kind of a bulkier figure because of the cloth, but you have that slimmer body under there so that the bulk can be built out with the cloth goods rather than with the body of the figure itself. Next, bringing in a couple other holiday themed figures. On the left is the Fresh Monkey Fiction Pirate Santa that I just got in hand and I really love, and I want to do a review of that very soon, hopefully. Then on the right, we have the Mezco 112 Collective Cousin Eddie from the Advent calendar from a few years back. And if you're wondering what the Father Christmas fabric feels like, and you have Cousin Eddie, just feel Cousin Eddie. It's the same super soft, velvety kind of material. And finally, to give a sense of size from some other rather familiar lines, we have a couple superhero figures. On the left is the retro Green Goblin from Marvel Legends. On the right is the Dark Knight Returns Superman from Mafex. For accessories, it does come with a Christmas tree again, and this really is just a repurposed craft store tree made out of the wire kind of things. Nothing crazy, very simple. But it does have a little base that you can kind of peg it into, and then you can peg it into the snow base, which is sculpted plastic. And then that snow base looks like this next to Father Christmas. So it's a pretty small tree, just a little addition, nothing major. And so I did remove the fabric belt, and I've got the other belt right here. As you can see, it is a sculpted plastic piece that's nicely detailed, but again, it can be a little bit of a tight fit. So I'll just kind of show you how that pegs on here. Kind of really cinches the suit when you do that, so you're going to get some bunching in the back. But once you get it back there, you can kind of bring it over and then peg it in just like that. So that's how it looks, right? So it gives them a little bit of a slimmer kind of look there. Another accessory is the alternate head, which is actually the same head sculpt as the original Father Christmas, and it's painted actually very similar. I don't think there's much of a difference paint-wise in these two head sculpts. Some other accessories, he's got some toys. So he does come with this little doll of an elf right here, and that actually can fit into his pocket, so that you can kind of just have that there as like a toy in his pocket right there. And then he does come with the drum again. This time it's green. The previous one had red there. And that's on a chain, and that can actually just hook right onto his belt. So you can slide that on like this and have it just kind of hanging from his belt if you want. He does come with the same satchel full of presents, and this looks to be painted the same way as the original, but that can go right over his shoulder. He's carrying a bag of gifts. It's also got the dog repainted as a fox, and people have asked, why isn't the collar painted? Is that a mistake? But it's really just there because the collar, this was originally a stuffed animal, like a husky stuffed animal, and it did have a collar. But a fox wouldn't really have a collar as it's a wild animal. So that's presumably why they didn't paint the collar on this one. But there's that toy. And then you do have the repainted duck. And this time it is Minotaur the duck, which is a really interesting story of one of the early Four Horsemen figures. Check out the Source Horseman article on Minotaur the duck. It's a very cool story about a figure that the fans essentially joked about and then they made. It's got a little trumpet, and this time it's in a silver color. The original one was like a brass color. I definitely prefer the brass, but it's cool to get just a different little option there for the trumpet. And he's got the crown of holly that is a removable piece, and he does actually come with an extra. They are identical, but he's just got an extra one because he's got two heads, so you got an extra crown of holly for both heads. He comes with a staff with a curved hook on the end, and then he's also got a nicely detailed lantern that can hang on that staff there with a little candle inside. Very nicely detailed. Just like another piece, the little collection of Victorian diorama pieces that the Four Horsemen are putting out is growing by the day. And finally, you have the other satchel. This one is made out of fabric. It's identical to the satchel that came with the original Father Christmas. And this one's got some surprises in it as well. Last year they had the Knights helmets in that silver color. This year they've got the Knights helmets. One of them is in the like glossy Black Knight slash phalanx color, and then the other one is in the gold, kind of weathered gold color of the new Gold Knight. So these two head sculpts for 1.0 Mythic Legions figures, and I'll show them in my swaps on some figures. And before we get into articulation, I'll start popping this apart so that you can see everything. So we can kind of remove that belt there, and the head sculpt pops off on that piece. And then this is a separate solid one piece right here. And we have the robes. What I like to do is unclasp this first on the front, just by sliding that over to this side, and then bringing the arms backwards and kind of bending them in this way. And then this will slide right off the arms. You do want to be a little careful because it kind of has, stuff that it can get caught on over here on the forearm pieces. And you pull that off, and then here's a look at that, that coat, that robe right there. And then underneath you sort of have this smock piece, and that smock piece is Velcroed on, and that'll come right off this way. And unlike the brown one from last year, we have a green one this year. Very elf-like body underneath there. Brighten it up there so that you can get a look at that elf body. We have the arms that are like the Whisperling colored flesh tone arms. So that's a nice little piece right there. And a lot of green. So painters and stuff will have a field day with that body if they want to customize it. And of course we have the peg that converts from a 2.0 body up to a 1.0 head. And I pop that head back on there so we can see the articulation. And of course this looks ridiculous. With the cloth it looks fine because he's all bulked up and built out, but without it, this head is just way too big for this body. But this body can be used with a lot of other Mythic Legions heads and stuff. So for the articulation, the head is on a ball joint, and it can kind of come side to side a little bit. You can twist it all the way around, and he can look down almost none at all, and can look up just a little bit. Got those hinges at the arms, and they swivel all the way around. Hinges at the elbows come up to about 90 degrees, and then you have a twist at the elbow. You have a twist at the forearm, twist at the wrist, hinge at the wrist. This being a 2.0 body, you do have that double ball joint at the top of the torso, and it can swing backwards and can sway side to side as well. And then there's just a twist at the waist, no ball at the waist. You have a swivel and hinge at the hip, a twist at the top of the leg, and then you have a single jointed knee, twist below the knee, twist at the ankle, rocker at the ankle, and then you have a hinge down and up. For some swaps, first up, the most obvious one is to take a Whisperling elf head and put it on this body, and I think that looks great. This is kind of right where we're supposed to be. You could take those arms, right, and you can just take just those green Whisperling arm parts and mix them in with any elf, including the elf that head came with, which is the deluxe elf from the Tactics wave that I showed earlier. So some really great options to mix this Father Christmas body with that Tactics elf. Here I'm leaning a little more into the wizard side of things. I have the Silverhorn Sentry body to get that 1.0 body involved, and then I have some leather feet on there, and the Faunus staff just to kind of give it a little wizardly action, but also kind of battle ready with that shield. And this cloth goods looks really good. Of course, it's a little tight on the 1.0 body, but it still looks pretty cool, and I think it still can work. Next up, I wanted to use the Knight heads, and rather than do the obvious Vampire Phalanx or Black Knight, I thought it would be cool to utilize those glossy blacks on Baron Voligar 2 to match it up with this head sculpt. And I think this is kind of a neat look. I think it might be a little too smooth. There's so much sculptural detail on the rest of the Baron Voligar figure that this helmet maybe doesn't quite match up, but the colors match up really well. The glossy blacks with that. I also do have a Max Bird cape on here to kind of complete the look. But yeah, I mean, this is kind of interesting. It almost has a little bit of like a crow kind of thing because of that beaked helmet. And then you have like those wings and stuff, but I don't know. I'm still on the fence. Let me know what you think of this particular swap here. And finally, we have the other knight's head, the gold head, and I didn't want to just do the straight up gold knight swap, so I mixed in Sir Owain. It's essentially the Sir Owain body, and then I used the forearms, belt, and feet from the gold knight. And I think this looks pretty awesome right here. And it just kind of proves the fact that the Sir Owain figure really is the gift that keeps on giving for part swaps. So final thoughts overall, if you have the first Final Christmas, this really is just a reissue in a different colorway with an added belt. But the cool thing about this colorway is it kind of changes it, you know, like this isn't just Santa. Like the original one really feels like that is Santa. This one could be any sort of like nature god, or it could be, like I said earlier, the ghost of Christmas present or something like that. So I find this to be a little more versatile in terms of the coloring and stuff than the original Father Christmas. So if you want a Santa, get the original Father Christmas. If you want a really cool kind of nature god / Santa that's a little more versatile, get this one. Anyway, thanks for watching my video, and until next time, may the Force be with you.